welcome to Hockey Talkie. It's been a very long offseason, longer than us Blackhawks fans are used to recently. But hockey is back. Hockey is finally back. And with that, I say welcome to the 2018-2019 Blackhawks season preview. Now, before we begin, before we dive into it, I do want to say one thing. If you are a fan of the Blackhawks, if you are a fan of Steve Dangle, if you are a fan of the Hockey Guy, if you are a fan of hockey, and you are not subscribed to this channel, that is a problem because you are not ready for this season. We can fix that, though, right now by you going down and hitting that subscribe button. I do game recap videos after every single Blackhawks game. I do videos on all the happenings throughout the NHL season. Do not let that subscriber count fool you because this is your best source for Blackhawks discussion on the YouTube. Make sure you're ready for the season by subscribing right now. All right, now that we've fixed that problem, we're ready to move on. We're ready to talk about what we can expect from the Blackhawks this season. Now, there are a couple main storylines to follow for this year. First and foremost being, when is Corey Crawford going to be back? Missed all the second half of last year dealing with post-concussion symptoms. And just only recently, within the last couple of weeks in training camp, was able to get back on the ice and actually do some practicing. Now, they were individual 30-minute practices before the team practice with the goalie coach, Jimmy Waite. But it was nice to see him at least back on the ice. And then now recently, within the last day or so, he's finally practiced with the team. It's a great step in his road back. He's still a ways away, though. Let's not get carried away and think he's going to be playing opening night just because he's practicing for the team. He's quite a bit away. There's no way you can really replicate game situations or game speed during practices. So playing in practice is one thing. Being ready to play in a game is completely something else. I personally would be surprised if he played at all in the month of October. But nonetheless, a very encouraging sign so far because if the Blackhawks don't have Corey Crawford this season, they are finishing dead last, like in the league. And worse than the league might be a little bit of a stretch. The Canucks are definitely going to be pushing hard for that coveted position, but definitely last place in the division. Another main storyline is whether or not the big guns for the Blackhawks can rebound after last year's down performances. On one hand, you have the Vegas Golden Knights having guys all over the board, career years left and right. And then you have the Blackhawks where it seemed like everybody was having career lows in terms of their stats and everything. It was a really weird year in that sense. The prior year, the Blackhawks were on top of the West, best record in the Western Conference. Obviously, they got swept by the Nashville Predators, but during the regular season, they were great. This past year, last place in the Central Division. It's really weird, and it's going to be interesting to see if last year is going to be the new normal or if it was more of just kind of one of those fluke years. Now, we can't expect guys like Keith and Taves and Seabrook to go back to their prime years ability, but personally, I don't think they are going to be as bad as they were last year. Like, last year was just like a perfect storm of crappiness. And then you had Scott Foster. Wait a second. So, I think I may have just figured something out. Scott Foster, he could have been like the Monstars, stealing the ability from all the Blackhawks players. This is very interesting. This is very, very interesting. Conspiracy theories aside, the Blackhawks are going to find a way to get their talent back and find a way to play at an acceptable level, because if they don't, and add to that Crawford being out, best look out, Canucks. Hold on to your butts because we're gunning for that first pick. And kind of the final main storyline for this year is the blue line. Duncan Keith last year, by his standards, had an atrocious year. Brent Seabrook just continued to regress. Now, he was dealing with some personal issues, and it seemed like he really took this offseason to heart to try and get faster and try and, get back to the player we, fell in love with way back when. And I think he hopes, and I think everyone hopes really, that he has a better season, because we need both these guys to have good seasons if the Blackhawks want to do anything But he looks determined, and that is a positive sign. Now, Erik Gustafsson kind of made his name kind of late last year a little bit, signed a 2-year contract with the Blackhawks. Looked great this offseason or this preseason as well. Really does well to generate shots. Looking for him to take kind of that next step. Connor Murphy is injured right now. Forsling is injured right now. We signed Brandon Davidson from PTO. We also signed Brandon Manning over the offseason. He did not look very good during the preseason, but maybe he'll turn it around. I'm not very optimistic about that, but who knows. But the main little glimmer of hope, I think, the ray of light right now for our blue line, comes in the form of 19-year-old Henri Jokiharju. He's about to show why he is the future core of the Blackhawks blue line, or at least one of the pieces there, along with Adam Boqvist, but he's in juniors for this year. Henri Jokiharju, very promising young guy. I'm excited to finally have a great prospect on the blue line for the Hawks. Now, he's a rookie. He's going to make rookie mistakes. He's not going to be perfect. But, boy, am I excited to see what he does this year, because he's looked great so far. Last year during juniors, this year during preseason training camp, everything so far has looked great. Excited to see him make his NHL debut and show us what he's really made of. So those are your main storylines for this season. If Crawford comes back, first half of the year, relatively early on, if the offense, picks up their production from last year, they don't have as down of a year as last year, and the defense picks up their play, if all three of those things happen, the Blackhawks could be fighting for a wild card spot in the Western Conference. They could make a push for the playoffs. If they don't get all three of those things, they're probably going to be finishing last in the division. Like I said, we don't really know exactly what last year really means for the future of the Hawks. Was it more of, a fluke year, or is it going to be more of the norm until, we get some young guys, young prospects up and coming and get more talent on this roster? We don't really know right now, but we're going to find out. There's a couple other smaller stories that I'm going to be following this year. Number one being Dominik Kahun, a German national team star who helped the German national team win silver at the Olympics. He joined the Blackhawks this offseason, and he's going to be on the top line with Taze and DeBrincat. And it kind of came in as an unknown, because we never know if internationalized players can transition to the NHL, the smaller rink sizes, and play that type of game. So far in the preseason, he looked great, and he did well enough to earn a spot on the top line. Now, the top line doesn't sound like that talented of a line, or that should be a top line, I guess, but I've liked what I've seen so far. In terms of the top line that the Blackhawks put out, this is one of the better ones we've had recently in the last couple of years. And I'm excited to see how Kahun does with the likes of Taze and DeBrincat. This could be a line, or Dominik Kahun could really surprise the NHL this year. I'm also looking forward to seeing how the new power play works out. The Blackhawks have switched to the 1-3-1 instead of the umbrella look for the power play, and it's the one that's used more in the NHL, and I wondered for a while why the Blackhawks wouldn't go to that system. Finally, they seem to have, bit the bullet and gone to it, and it looks like it's paying off. I mean, it's a system that gives you options, and with the Blackhawks playmakers out there, I'm just really surprised they haven't gone to it earlier, but thankfully they've finally gone to it, and so far it's looked pretty good. Now, power plays, you're not going to score on all of them. Like, the best power plays are usually around 20-25%, like 1 in 4, 1 in 5, scoring a goal. But the thing you really look for on power plays is at least just kind of gaining momentum, getting the puck in the zone, getting offensive zone time, getting shots on, and just getting or maintaining momentum. And I think the Blackhawks move into a 1-3-1. We're going to see them gain or maintain momentum a lot more than last year, when it seemed like they were just losing momentum because of awful power plays. So that's kind of your Blackhawks in a nutshell for this season. They start the year off in Ottawa against the Senators. Hopefully they win that game. Senators aren't really projected to be that great, but who knows? They still got some good players on that team, even though they traded away Erik Karlsson. Last year, they started off with a 10-1 win. I don't think they're going to beat that this year. But as we saw last year, just because you win 10-1 in your opening game doesn't mean you're going to do all that well for the rest of the year. So, who knows? But definitely excited that meaningful hockey is finally back. Now, looking at the rest of the division, the Central Division, the Thunderdome Division, it's pretty clear that the top 2 spots are going to be the Nashville Predators and the Winnipeg Jets. Either of those teams are going to win the Central. They're basically 1A and 1B. That's just how it's going to be. That third spot, the team that I see that has kind of the inside track to that is the St. Louis Blues. They've had a great offseason. But just because you have a great offseason doesn't mean you have a great regular season. You can ask the Dallas Stars about that. But then that fourth spot, that wild card spot in the Central Division. Now, personally, I think the Pacific and the Central will both have 4 teams that make it. So that fourth spot, that lone wild card spot for the Central Division, I feel like could go to any of the remaining teams. You have the Dallas Stars, who always seem to have a great offseason. We'll see if it actually translates to the regular season this time. You have the Minnesota Wild, who did not have a great offseason at all and really did nothing, but we kind of say that every year, and every year they somehow find a way to make the playoffs, so who knows about that. Then you have the Colorado Avalanche, who had an historically awful year the year prior to last year, and then rebounded fantastically to make the playoffs last year. We'll see if last year was a fluke with them. And then same with the Blackhawks. We'll see whether or not last year was a fluke. But it's going to be a tough race for that fourth and final spot in the Central Division. It should be fun. Now I'm going to say this. I think that the team that comes out of the Central Division bracket in the playoffs, I think that's going to be the team that represents the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup final this year. I know last year the Jets just... Man, they got beat up, worn down throughout the playoffs against the other Central Division teams, and they just couldn't hang with the Golden Knights. But I think this year is going to be different. I think that whoever comes out of the Central Division bracket is going to represent the West. And I think that they're going to be playing the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Cup final. Now, I'm going to add to that and say it's the Jets that represent the West in the Stanley Cup final. So it's going to be the Maple Leafs and the Jets. An all-Canadian final. How about that for a bold take? We haven't had that in years, like many years. But that's my take. That's what I think is going to happen. All the silliness aside, all these projections aside, these predictions that are coming from a guy who's not Nostradamus, I'm going to leave you with one final thing, the most important thing that I hope you take out of this video, and that's Let's Go Hawks. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of this season, what you hope and expect to see out of the Blackhawks. Like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate that as always. Make sure you subscribe and you're ready for this season. But most importantly, stay safe and make good decisions. Hockey's back, baby, and I'll see you next time.